Present.
Present. Susan Ryder. Present.
We got the whole crew, so we have a quorum, so we can begin. So please join me in the pledge of standing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will on the podium to anybody from the audience who would like to address the board. If anybody would like to do that, please feel free to do so. If not, we'll move on to item 4, the addition of a discussion item or a future agenda item. If anybody on the board would like to pose something that we need to discuss tonight or put on an agenda for future, please let us know. Or send an email to Dr. Sophie or myself in the future.
Just a quick comment. The discussion of moving the board meetings will be February, and for lack of better terms, staff contact with students outside the school day, we discuss at policy. Terry Hodges is putting some things together, and I'll let the policy committee discuss that at the next meeting. So those are the 2 things we have left.
I did get a request to raise the issue of the number of chairs in the lunchroom at the middle school. One of my constituents has reached out and asked that that be,
Okay.
I don't know that that needs to be a board discussion, but just so I can say I
Is it
did
too
my
many?
job and raised too few. Trouble finding seats in the middle school lunchroom.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll tell you the number, and I'll get a little blurb from Nate and put that in your board updates this week.
Okay.
So you've got that answer.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, so now we're going to move on.
One thing,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to put on the agenda sometime to try to address this tardiness issue. We have kids, so many tardiness issues with kids. It just seems ridiculous to me.
We'll actually be presenting an update on that anyway, on where we are mid-year. So that should be probably February anyway.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to the discussion items and begin with item 5A, the 2017-2018 student fees. And I believe Mr. Khan is going to present to us on that recommendation.
I'll start real quickly with this. As you know, on our board planning calendar, we set student fees. We discuss it first, and then we'll be asking for your approval. One of the things that ties into student fees tonight is transportation, and there's a few things that you need to know in transportation. I want to just make a comment that we are recommending this year be another year where transportation is not charged for, but I also need to go on record as saying this may be the last year that we can afford to do that. So keep that in mind as we go through this, and I'm going to turn it over to Jay on student fees.
Okay. Student fee recommendation for next year is to hold them relatively stable with a few exceptions. Last year fees were not increased, they were the same in 2015, in 2016-17 as they were in 2015-16, so we're recommending a $5 increase to each grade level for the material fee and just to keep pace with inflation. The 2 fees that we did want to look at adjusting are the elementary band and chorus fee, which is currently $15. This is significantly below all of our comparable districts. And we actually have some fairly significant expenses for the elementary band in the form of activity bus that we have after school assembly time. So we're looking at bringing that fee in line with the middle school general band fee in line with what our comparable fees are in other districts for that And then the other fee is the half-day kindergarten and early childhood fees. We're looking at increasing again from $110 to $125, so instead of $5, it would be $15. They just help with the cost of the extra bus that we have to take them away.
Jay, the activity bus for the LBES band, is that well used?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We have several of them actually. We have 3, so it's. I think we have 2 on we have 3 on one day of the week and 2 on other days.
I'm just wondering if the buses are actually filled with kids or there's just a small handful and maybe there's another way to do
Small
it.
buses, but not the light buses.
Okay. Okay.
Does the, go ahead.
Yeah, Jay, if you took out the revenue from the pre-K, extended kindergarten, summer school athletic stuff, give me a ballpark of what all those other total costs are. If you took out those, you know, those big ones.
Our total.
Do you know what total revenue for the, like the, from the band through the sixth grade sports events?
How much money do we bring in?
Yeah.
In sports?
For all of those things, how much money do we bring in for all those things? Rough estimate.
Is that something you can't answer right now?
Well, here's my thinking is, I don't know what the administrative cost is of trying to collect all these fees from all these kids, and what kind of a pain it is for everybody to write checks out all the time for that.
Actually, it's just one check when you register for the school year.
Oh, so
Yeah.
they do the whole thing at once.
Mhm.
So's what I know.
Well,
It's not online, too.
you just roughly 800 kids times an average of $150, right? I mean, just to round it off, that's pretty substantial.
And do most people do it electronically now online?
100 grand, 120 grand.
You
Yeah.
can check some of the school for those fees.
Where-
Most of the grade level fees are all electronic at registration.
And Richard, where are you going with that? Like, we should be covering that in other ways, or?
Just looked at it and didn't understand how much, what a bother that is for covering 120,000 when our budget is what it is. Seems like it's not a huge amount. Just wondered if it made sense to continue down the road that we're on.
It's well over 100 grand.
I
There's a reason that the attachment B, Lake Bluff proposed doesn't match what's in attachment A, or is that just an oversight? If you look at attachment B where it says Lake Bluff proposed on the right-hand side, those numbers don't exactly match up. 8th grade is 220 and I think the proposed is 225.
Yeah.
Just a typo. Some of them match up and some of them don't match up. Okay. So it's attachment A is the one we're addressing.
Correct.
Okay.
Attachment A have the new figures.
Yeah, because attachment B has to be edited.
So I have kind of a philosophical question about the decision to hold steady some of these larger fees, and then presumably at some point something has to give, right? So I'm looking at the extended day kindergarten, which has been $2,500, I think, since my 19-year-old went to extended day kindergarten. It's been $2,500 for a long time.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
We are holding that one
2010.
kind of firm right now because there is possible legislation that school districts will not be able to charge for full-day kindergarten. There's a case in court right now from another school district. So we don't want to get too dependent on that, knowing that we may not be able to charge for that eventually down the road.
Richard,
So-
in answer to your question, we take in about $30,000 in all those other fees.
30,000
Yes,
In
for
the
all of those.
for activity fees.
it strikes me, other than Deerfield, that we're pretty low on those. But it sounds like, do we have an end in sight as to when we might know that?
Well, no, but I would say if nothing has been done by next year, we're going to have to raise that because we are very low.
I think we are, and
We could do it this year, but
well, I think that we haven't had any trouble, at least in recent years, in getting people to subscribe, right? We haven't had 2 half days, I think. The last couple of years, we've only had one section of half days.
one section and a half days for the past 2 years.
And
Three.
At least that year, we have
Okay.
4 years is we have one section half.
We could increase that a certain percentage this year. Just beware that there may be a point where we will not be able to charge for that.
I understand, and I don't want to make it difficult for young families by any means, but it just, what I kept thinking is that that's going to jump. At some point it's going to go from 2,500 to 3,500 or 2,500 to 3,000, and maybe we'd be in a better place to do something a little more gradual, like every year go up.
Why don't you take it by 2% next year? At least
Or
that
if you
gives
want
it
to
a
round
little
it,
bit.
do $100 or $200, because it strikes me that it's good to hold it steady and not jump, just like we try to level off the tax
Mhm.
liability to be sort of steady.
That was my same thinking with the transportation fee.
I know,
Why go from
just
0
gonna-
up to, now with the kindergarten though, I have a different philosophy because people typically aren't gonna have a kindergartner one year, then the next year, then the next year, so it's sort of whether it's, whatever it is this year is gonna affect different families than whatever it is next year, so it's not so much a hit on the family budget. But with the transportation fee, I would
Yeah.
consider maybe whether, rather than
Well,
going from where we are to 0,
Right, I was
We-
going to raise that one as the second.
Transportation's going to be changing a lot, so we still have that report coming up. There's a lot going on in that.
So, there's gonna be a report on that one.
That's the third one down tonight.
Alright.
So on that point though, I think we're going to have a big drop off on people if we go from 0 to 400 a year, and we might ease people into paying if we went from 0 to 100 this year, and then 100 to 200 next year, and built some reserve. I think you're right to be concerned that people are going to be less likely to subscribe, even if it's $100.
We talk about buses.
Buses,
Yeah,
yeah, we should
which-
go to buses, because,
which-
but it's a philosophical question. Do we want to do 0 one year and 400 the next, or 300 the next, and similarly on the half day?
You may want to wait on the transportation till we talk about it, because that's going to be, there's a lot of changes in transportation. A lot.
Yeah, but none of them are going to change the fact that we're looking at having to implement charges again, right?
Maybe, because our costs are going to be substantially going up.
So maybe we
So-
should start to build a reserve in that
I
case.
think we should think about it. And the other thing to think about is why don't we test the waters with $100 or something, and then we can see how much that impacts subscription.
All right, so I hear the suggestions. Let me just make sure. The extended day kindergarten, 100 or 200. So I'm going to tell you 150. And for the transportation, a possible 100. Let's just start there. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
I agree. I think we need to do something incremental. And
How does
to
the rest
your
of
point
it
about
involve?
kindergarten, I agree that it's
Are we
not
talking
as
about
noticeable for a family as kindergarten, but families with 2 and 3 and 4 children remember year over year. And if they have 1 year it's 2,500 and the next year it's 3,500, they're gonna notice it, or even 2 years hence. So
I wanna hear more about transportation before I give you an
Yeah.
answer.
right, yeah.
That's why we'll talk about transportation, then flip back to this, because
Okay.
you're going to be approving it at the January 24th meeting.
I still think, I don't think your number's right. I mean, you've got it roughly 800, so you're getting back to your $30,000. You've got roughly 800 students and they're paying $150 a piece. That's well over $100,000. Can't be 30.
Well, not everybody's in an activity.
No, I
There's
was
different things, there's registration
I
fees
had
and
the
activity
fees.
fees.
I thought he was asking about the fees.
I thought he was asking for everything except like down below the line.
Oh,
No,
sorry, then I-
above the line.
I thought he was asking about, what were you asking, Rich?
I was asking everything below the summer athletic camp.
Okay.
Just seems like we're, just nickel dining.
But it all adds up.
For the extracurriculars, I think it's appropriate to ask people to pay a little bit more if they're gonna take advantage of it.
Especially with free transportation.
Yeah.
This at least covers the bus routes for that.
Can
Can I just throw in one thing here? I'm just gonna skip the transportation. Any thought to, maybe it's here and I just haven't seen it, if we make that change, any thought to means testing that?
To
Means
Yeah.
testing transportation?
Interesting question.
How do you do that, though?
Very interesting.
Well, I mean, so access I think is really important. I mean, if you look at free and reduced lunch population, and chances are, let's say both people are working, there could be families that count on transportation in the morning, and I think you have to think about what adverse effects you put on those families. It's probably not a ton of families, but for those that does affect, it would be a pretty significant change. So
It also
that-
may add to the congestion in the elementary school parking lot, which is greatly changed since we've been offering free transportation.
Well, you said it's coming up. Let's
So
wait
anyway,
until we come to it.
that's my concern that I'm thinking about.
Well, transportation fees would be waived for families, just like the other fees would
Free and
be. So the
reduced.
same.
Free and reduced, but the people who just inch above that are out of luck.
Yeah,
So
again, I'll wait.
I
till
would
we
just
go.
want to. I mean, I know we've got some time to think about that, but I just want to see if you have any data that would show what the impact would be. I just think that. I mean, I think this time of year, especially, it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
What impact that's going to have on certain families.
Do those waivers apply to everything, like the band and the chorus fee as well?
Yes,
Everything.
field trips,
Okay.
everything that's.
Even the Washington DC field trip.
Okay. All right. Well, it's just something to think about.
Right. And again, I guess we'll get there, but maybe we are there in terms of the discussion. I think there's means testing, or is there free and reduced? I conceptualize those differently. Means testing is you pay according to your means. Some may pay a lot more, some may pay a mid amount, some may pay nothing at all. Or free and reduced, I conceptualize as you
They pay nothing,
get it covered, right?
generally.
Which would be, I would think, reserved for very, needy.
I was thinking more of the latter case
Okay.
of it being free and reduced.
And
Yeah,
those kids are.
means test spread.
It's a bright line rule.
We have generally just free. We don't have any reduced, do we?
Because we don't participate in the National School Lunch
Yeah.
Program, we just do free. I'm thinking about doing a reduced for meals next year. The fee waiver is completely separate though, and we have the ability to set any income level we choose for waiving fees. We don't have to follow the federal guidelines. Or you can pick a percentage of the poverty line if you want to increase it.
Okay.
Typically, the free is 130% and reduced is 185%, but you could go 4 times the poverty line or something like that for transportation fees.
That's my only concern is people that need to get to school,
Yeah.
that we can get them there. And I don't know what the utilization is of those populations of using the bus anyway. Maybe they do get dropped off by the parents, but I'd like to see what the overlap is there.
And then, as Gene was saying, the only difference between the transportation fee and some of the other fees is that it requires, I would say, more resources to monitor and
A lot more.
enforce, because you don't know who's getting on the bus. If you don't pay the fee, how do you, can you still ride the bus?
Administrative costs
And
are
then
a
just the
lot.
congestion, it causes changes in behavior, so you will have more congestion
Tardiness.
in schools, and there's the
Well,
tardiness.
it would look to me like you have to extend the amount of time that kids could be dropped off during. My memory of when we didn't have bus service was that there's a 10-minute window. Like you want them there by 8, put them through elementary. They can't get there until 7:50 because there's not adult supervision, and there literally sometimes isn't a way to get your kid there on time if they're not on the bus.
Keep
Because
in
there's
mind,
so much congestion.
keep in mind if we do that though, we're cutting back on instructional time.
Right.
So
Or we're
Well,
incurring additional
that's why we're
costs
saying
of
so the
supervision.
cost.
there's a cost to it.
Well, I'd like to explore the idea that we keep transportation free for everybody, and I presume
Well,
that's
we
part
can
of the
afford to do
presentation
it.
that's coming up.
Yeah.
While that's why I made the statement before we started. Next year, we could afford to do it. We've already levied that amount.
Mm-hmm.
We're already set. We know we could afford it next year. That's why I said when we started out, it may be the last year we can afford to do it. And then we get to Susan's point of, then maybe we should just get everybody acclimated instead of going from 0 to 300 or whatever it may be. That'll be a board discussion after we talk about transportation tonight. Any other questions on all the other fees?
So we'll move on to building use fees.
One more thought about kindergarten, because I don't want to lose track of that. It feels to me like it ought to cover our costs, the $2,500 costs. And I think last time I asked about this last year, it didn't.
It doesn't.
Like what would our costs be? Do we know?
I haven't done the calculation, but I can do that for next week.
If we compare it to the average cost
For the whole cost
district, it's
of doing that. Why don't we figure out that cost right now by bringing it up to $150? That's a substantial increase for families.
Yeah.
And we'll still get you the cost of, generally, of that extra half day of kindergarten. We'll have to look at the salary for teachers and any overhead for that.
Well, the overhead's gonna be there anyway, just the direct costs.
Well, and there's
Don't allocate building costs or anything, that's
No, none of that.
salary.
But you've got some-
benefits, that sort of
the
thing.
incremental cost you
Curriculum.
incur by
Incremental.
offering
Another half day.
a
Right.
full day.
But don't allocate overhead.
And I think it's hard to measure though, the cost of the cost of increasing it and having fewer kids participate. Like if you really increased it to the point where it was covering the cost,
Yeah.
my guess, you'd have a pretty significant change in the number of kids participating, and that has a cost associated with it too.
That has a cost for
Do you
student
already have a
achievement.
waiting list?
Well,
And that-
for student achievement, for individual kids, for, you know,
Right.
if you're providing special interventions to kids.
It has a lot of costs.
Has a
So
lot of,
what I will do is that we'll go ahead and increase it 150, and we'll generalize how much more it would be. But that's strictly cost, it's none of the other incremental side effects of that.
Do we have a waiting list for full day kindergarten?
No.
We did not this last school year. We did be over that.
Is the curriculum for a full day really 2 half days?
No, the curriculum for full day is a full kindergarten curriculum. So kids that go half day are not getting the full curriculum that full day are. When I came here, in fact, Ben Martindale, the superintendent before me, actually changed it. It used to be the same curriculum for full day and half day.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference was there were some specials in the afternoon. And there was a lot of controversy with that because many of the parents paid for full day, but you really weren't getting
Okay.
more additional curriculum. So,
Anybody else on the fees? Right, so building use fees, item 5.
Before I go on, I'll just, John, the number is 120,000 for the other fees.
Above the line, 120, below
All
the
right.
line, 30.
And
Before we
we
go
collect
on-
155,000 or so in half-day, full-day kindergarten fees, to give you some perspective.
okay, under building use fees, I just wanted to make a general comment because Mark has been concerned about this. We talked about it at policy. This is a great place to insert it in. Building use fees. Anybody who uses our building is asked to provide a certificate of insurance, which has a cost to it. And Mark and I were talking when the caucus used our building. The caucus, as you know, collects no monies and doesn't have any money to get a certificate of insurance. So I had asked Jay, what happens with that? Liability-wise, are we still covered? We had over a couple hundred people come in the one night for caucus. And our liability insurance covers that, but you need to know that any other groups, we ask them to have a certificate of insurance. The caucus group we can work with, we're still covered, so you need to know the liability is covered, but they have no monies to cover a certificate of insurance.
Are there other groups that fall into that same kind of category?
Not generally, no. No one uses our building currently.
Well, actually, the example that was brought up to me by the caucus is like, what if a state senator wanted to come and have a town hall meeting and use our building, and people came in and...
They collect money, they have money stuff to do that.
the thing with the
Yeah.
caucus also
Yeah.
is that it perfectly mirrors the district of the school.
Right.
So that's different from, right,
Even a senator
anybody
doesn't have
else
money.
would have,
The
but
caucus-
anybody else would have a district slightly different
Right.
from the school district. So it seems to me like it's the exact taxpayers who would be
Right.
covering that tab anyway.
It would depend on who's sponsoring the event. If we were asking a senator to come in and present, then it's sort of our event, and we would be responsible for the
If the
insurance.
senator wants to have a campaign rally at our school, right?
Then we would ask
Then
for
we would
insurance.
charge them, yeah. We would have a certificate.
Okay.
So, okay, if somebody is hurt on school property at one of these events, regardless of who hosts the event, where does that liability reside? I mean, they have a certificate of insurance, but does that mean that the group and not the school that provided where they
Right.
had the
What the
dangerous?
certificate does is essentially, they name us as an insured on their policy. So they're providing insurance for their event, and if somebody got hurt, they would be the primary insurance. And so even if we were sued, our insurance company would subrogate that claim to their insurance company.
Got it.
If
Okay.
it's the caucus where we would be providing the insurance.
Got it.
And I would say that's a rare thing, because everybody else has the certificates of insurance.
Right. Good.
But I wanted to make sure that I felt that the board should hear, because that was an important topic, so. All right, Jay.
So building use fees, we collect very, very little building use fees. Most of the people who use our building are community groups and/or groups that benefit our students, so we don't charge them for building use. I don't think anybody has actually even paid the $75 an hour fee. But I would propose raising the pass-along cost that we charge for if we have to hire a custodian or pay overtime to a custodian to supervise and or clean up after an event from $36 an hour to $38 an hour, simply because of our costs are going up.
And that covers our costs then,
That
correct?
is just a straight pass-through of our cost.
Is that enough to, ensure that we're paid for the administrative difficulty of passing through that cost, et cetera? I mean, it seems like if it's, I don't know, it seems like there's some additional
There's really not.
administrative hassle. No?
There's really, Tammy Robards handles that and Steve. And the volume that I've seen in other school districts, we just don't have here.
Okay.
Yeah, so that might change, Susan, if and when people start really using the building. But right now, we don't have lines out the door using the building.
It's a small part of their job, and they can do it without significant headaches.
Question?
Questions on that?
So I guess the last thing I want to point out is maybe not having the actual dollar amount per custodian, because don't their salaries vary or their hourly rates vary?
They vary, but they're all pretty close together.
Okay.
And it's sort of the average, so depending on who we assign,
Okay.
it would average out.
Fine, thank you.
Any other questions on that?
All right, now to the transportation discussion.
My favorite.
5C.
All right, Jay,
You're on again.
the lights are on you.
So tonight we're not asking for approval of a contract. I just want to update the board on some of the discussions I've had with Olson Transportation and what the current state of our transportation is. Before I get into the details, I wanted to give you some background. We jointly bid our transportation contract with Lake Forest High School. So our current pricing is based on this joint contract and based on the sharing of routes. So as an example, last year, the same bus who would drop kids off at the high school would then drop kids off at the elementary school and then do a middle school route. So we were benefiting from the shared buses. We currently have extremely low pricing. We were getting a very good deal. Currently, even Deerfield High School, who is with Olson Transportation, pays about 30% more than we do on a per route basis because they don't have that shared feature in their contract. And then lastly, Lake Forest High School this year changed their bell schedule so that they start their high school at a different time. And as a result, we no longer share any routes with Lake Forest High School.
So share was 67 at all?
No, they're
Neither.
neither.
So
We
So
only
there's
share
no more sharing.
115. That is impacting our current year costs because in our contract we have a shared bus cost and then a non-shared bus cost, and so a lot of these shared buses have been switched over to non-shared buses. So we're seeing about a 30% increase this year at our current rates with our current contract in transportation costs, which is roughly $80,000. In terms of future costs, Olson has indicated they're willing to work with us. I had a discussion with them today in which they let me know that our business under the new conditions without having shared buses, they're breaking even at best on all of our business. We're a pretty significant portion of their business. And when buses break down, it adds incremental costs. So the way they put it was if everything ran smoothly, they would be breaking even. So basically our options going forward are to go out for bid or to try to negotiate something with Olson. We would bid transportation probably by ourselves because right now we're not currently getting any benefit from having a contract with Lake Forest. There is an opportunity to potentially bid with Lake Forest and or Deerfield just for volume of routes and possibly get lower pricing. But the current market rates for transportation out there are very high. They're considerably higher than what we're paying. The danger with bidding is that we could potentially see a cost increase per route of up to 50%. There's currently a driver shortage, so
Nationwide.
So Olson has dramatically increased their salaries this year, and then health insurance rates are also going up significantly. So there's risk in doing that. And talking with Olson, they indicated that they had a desire to, or basically they said don't expect, or reading between the lines, we shouldn't expect the 2 to 3% price increases that we've been seeing. If possible, they would like to negotiate something that would become effective this year, so to increase our current year prices and have that go through the end of next year. We're in a contract, our prices are locked in, and we don't need to do that. But if we continue to benefit from the lower prices this year, that's potentially just going to increase our prices that much more next year. Lake Forest would need to be part of the discussion. Right now, our contract is a joint contract, and if we were to change that, we can't just change our contract without going out to bid due to the bidding rules in the state. And lastly, Olson is a known quantity, so the other risk in bidding is that you don't know who's going to win your bid. We could either wind up with Olson at a market rate, or we could wind up with somebody else, and then there's the changeover costs of having a new bus company learn your routes, and the service is not necessarily guaranteed to be any better. It could be worse. So at this point, we're recommending that we talk to Olson and try to work out a deal. We'll have to bring Lake Forest into the discussion and see where it ends up. But at our current rates, we're looking at an additional 30% over last year, and it could be another 30% increase next year.
Realistically, based on your knowledge of that industry in this area, if we were to bid out that contract, how many bidders do you think we would get other than Olson?
Probably 2 or 3 max.
We would get 2 or 3?
2 or 3.
I mean, I know of other bus companies. I don't know who would be interested or have the capacity. I could.
So that's more than I thought. So
I could name a handful of bus companies. I don't know who would want to bid on our.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of looking at recent bids. That's kind of on my to-do list. But I did benchmark our costs. We paid approximately $190 per route, and that's and I think Deerfield pays $245, and the recent North Chicago bid came in at $275 per route. So there's, I have no idea what we would see.
Plus, we don't know what we're getting for service.
Right. I think bidding is generally a good thing, but you lose control. You don't know what people are going to bid. They're going to look at their costs, and if they're going to lose money on the business, they'd rather not do it.
Does that number, just for clarification now, because I was looking at this pretty closely today. You said North Chicago $275 per route.
It's per bus per day. So.
And isn't that like the numbers you supplied to us, where I see numbers like $42 per route and $80?
And so where I get my number is if I look at a bus, the bus does the middle school at $42, then it does the elementary at $42, then the middle school at $42 in the morning, and then it does that again at night.
So
for $42 for 42
for the whole day.
For the whole day.
Okay.
And then there's.
And that's an apples to apples versus the North Chicago kind of number?
I don't know. I mean, our costs do not include. I added in also fuel costs. Our fuel costs are separate. Some bids are all in fuel costs, and then if fuel goes above a certain price, there's a surcharge. I sort of like the way we do it, where we're just responsible for a flat rate, and as fuel goes, our bill goes. Where when fuel prices went down, we benefited from that, and if fuel prices go up, then we pay pay that, and it's just a pass through of those costs.
So the bottom line is, well, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. I think our administration feels pretty strongly that we know what we've got with Olson, and we prefer to try to negotiate with them. We think we might get a better deal all the way around, but we don't know. And we still are locked into negotiating it with Lake Forest right now, even though we don't share any routes with them, because that's what the contract is. So
That's what I didn't understand. So we're not going to share any routes with them, but we get some benefit to continuing to bid with them because of the
I don't
volume?
know if there would be a benefit.
not at this point.
At this point, there certainly wouldn't be from a shared route standpoint. It's more if we went out with 3 school districts and lots of kids, that might be a more attractive business, and some bus company might bid lower than they otherwise would for a small district like ours.
So if we were to say we don't think we get a lot of benefit, so we'd like to negotiate just on our own, then we have to put it out to bid because it's a whole new contract? Is
I
that,
would have to confirm that, but that's my.
that's your thought? Similarly, if we were going to go with Deerfield because we could maybe share routes because their school day is, or we'll do with Deerfield what we used to do with Lake Forest, share buses.
And I don't think we would be able
I
to do
see.
that. I think
Okay.
that's again just a volume argument, and I don't know
It's just
what the
volume.
size of that is. You know,
Yeah.
with Lake Forest, I think it was a unique opportunity given the scheduling.
Yeah.
And we were significantly benefiting from it.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
really before now realize to what extent, but a significant amount.
Yeah, makes sense.
We've also, and then in the last couple of years, we've been spending down our fund balance both through waiving our transportation fee and then also some intentional levy changes to make, to bring our fund balance down from 150% of annual expenditures, into more of the target range that the board has.
So the question now lies, going back to student fees, what you want to do with transportation, knowing that we're in the middle of negotiating on this.
Well, it sounds to me like we're going to see an increase one way or the other.
Definitely.
So I side with the theory of gradually increasing the transportation fee.
$100 per child maybe next year, just start.
At least.
Is everybody else in agreement with
my,
that?
my feeling, let me finish, I think my feeling would be to attempt at least to cover the increase somehow with whatever the increase will be in the new contract. So if it's a $30,000 increase, I don't know what that means per child, but I'd like to at least think we could cover that.
If you negotiated with Olson right now, what type of commitment would you be looking to go into?
It would be a 1-year commitment.
For 1 year.
The way the contracts work, if we bid it, it would be a 3-year contract, but at this point in Olson, we're year to year.
For me, I think that would make sense because I think the other thing that you have to see once you implement a fee is what utilization of the bus is going to do and what your traffic pattern looks like, and I think that could give you, I don't know, I just think the year that you implement the fee, it's going to be pretty revealing
And
to
keep
what
data on it
behavior is.
before we really, because keeping in mind again, we've already levied for transportation for next year. So next year might be the year we start with 100,
Yeah,
so families get used to it.
and then you see
And we
too
keep
what
track of tardiness, we keep track of the parking lot, we collect data on it before we really have to make some decisions the following year.
I think it might be really interesting to explore 2 things. One, Phil, you haven't started thinking about maybe this levels of payment, needs-based kind of levels of payment, and beyond just the black and white, you pay or you don't pay. Perhaps at some level you pay full cost, and another level you pay some specs cost or something. But is what I'm thinking. But the other thing I wanted to explore is when we announce this, let's announce to people what it costs per pupil. Because I think paying $100 on a $400 fee is a much different thing than paying your $100 when the cost of the district is $120.
Yeah.
I think if people knew transparently the cost to the district of getting the children there, and that they were only being asked to pay $100 per child, it would be easier to solve.
Well, what is it? It's 400,000 a year we spend, right?
And
So
how many
400,
kids
how
on
many
the
kids
bus?
use the bus?
Or 450.
So it's
Well,
$1,000
it's
a
just
student.
families.
Oh, wait, 400?
I was gonna say, I thought the number was
Actually, it is
higher
six.
than that.
Right now, it's 670. I did look that up to try to figure out how many
You know,
kids would.
I think you gotta collect more data, and I think the 1 year thing is the way to go. People are so finicky. I mean, whatever our fee is, it's not gonna be that big of a deal to many families, but some of them, just on principle, even though they should be paying the $100, are all of a sudden be clogging up your drop-off zone, just out of
Somehow we need to
spite.
get out there.
Well, I'm with Phil. I'm not sure that knowing, oh, it costs $1,000, but I'm only being asked to pay $100 is going to make a difference. I do have a question as to whether paying $100 is going to be an impediment to the convenience of taking the bus, whereas $400 I think is a pretty big hit to people to say, wow, for a bus. Especially with the middle schoolers when sometimes they find there are other ways to school. But here's my other question that I just want to put out there. An alternative to increasing user fees would be to levy, so that the town bears the burden of the cost of getting all the kids to school, which I think is something I'd at least like to keep on the table. I'd like to understand if
We've
we were
already
to
done
put-
that though.
For this year.
For this year,
For,
right.
no, that's for this year's
Well,
budget.
right. We've done it
So
for the,
well-
right. But if we were to want to continue to do that, we'd have to levy more, and what would the impact be per household of that levy to keep it free?
Levying toward max, aren't we?
Yeah, anything we levied in transportation additionally would come out of some other fund. We'd have to lower our levy in education because
Use
we're.
out limits.
Bring
on
in
the
less
bus.
somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And
Use out limits.
If they pass a property tax freeze, which they could
It
do.
won't matter
in the state,
anyway.
It won't matter because we won't be able to increase our levy at all.
So I'm hearing that people right now, and you have 2 weeks to think about it, because remember, we can always revise it on approval date. I'm hearing $100 right now per student.
That feels kind of arbitrary. I would also suggest looking at the fees that the high school pays for bus routes, just to give you a sense of what people have paid in the past. It's a lot of money.
Well, I mean, I know what our fees used to be, it's on the fee chart. And then I also have bus fees on the fee chart as well from our comparable districts. I don't have high school, but I have the 67, and they're all $400 and $500. You know, we're one of the few districts. I think Lincolnshire also does not charge for busing, and they have their own bus fleet. But other than us, most of the other districts charge for buses in the $300, $400, $500 range. And this high school is the same.
I think when
With
we've
breaks
gone
for
to
second
zero,
children.
when we've had zero and we have money in the account and we've already done our levy, my own personal opinion is that I think if we're gonna charge a fee, it should be no more than 100, and I think we should keep data on it to figure out. I mean, we've greatly reduced tardiness, we've greatly reduced parent frustration in the parking lot, and I'm the one that deals with the parents that are calling, screaming at me about the parking lot.
I used to get endless complaints about this.
Mhm.
And that 10-minute window for dropping off at LBES made people crazy.
Yeah.
Because
And
you get stuck in traffic, you couldn't get there.
Well, okay, let's look at this a little bit different. What's our capacity right now on our bus lines? What's the additional seating on the bus? What's not being used?
We don't really have any, we have full buses from what I
Do we have full
understand.
buses?
Because they had to add a bus because we had,
That was one route, and that was last year.
So-
we don't have it this year.
So what if we charged a fee for drop off?
Yeah,
It's like a concierge. You know, you're willing to pay a premium to drop your kid off. Otherwise, they use the bus and they pay our busing fees that way.
Well, living on Green Bay, I proposed that when they talked
oh,
about.
I have a few parents that when I get their phone calls, I'd be happy to route them to you.
We can't make a decision based on just a few.
It's not your decision, and we would make that decision. But I'm not
I don't
saying
know how you
that's what we
charge
do, but
people.
it would be interesting to look at that.
I don't know how you charge people for that though. I mean, if somebody wants to drive up and drop their kid off somewhere, you can't really pay a fee for that.
Well, if they want to pull into the parking lot at the school, then there's a
You gotta have a sticker.
fee for that.
Gotta have a sticker.
Yeah. Which, how do you enforce that?
But then the
I
town's
don't
gonna,
know.
then the town's
But-
gonna scream because they're gonna be dropping them off on the Washington
Exactly.
across the street.
I totally misunderstood what Phil was saying, although I'm interested in that idea too. What I was thinking is, getting to school is free. If you want your kid on the bus on the way home, you pay the cost of the route in the afternoon, so that we incent people to continue to use it to get there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But you know, I think that you could just look at that congestion as just a mess, and you're willing to put up with it if people are willing to pay. If not, if not, you get a bus,
That is an interesting
My-
idea.
and the drop-offs subsidize the bus service.
So what our recommendation is gonna be actually my recommendation was no charge for next year. So what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from all of you generally is $100. You need to give us some guidance
Well-
on what to bring to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted because on the one hand, I don't like going from 0 to 400, and that's per student, right? So you have families with multiple kids,
Yes.
they're going to pay 3 kids $1,200. That to me seems crazy.
For the successive kids.
Okay, but not that much if I recall right. But
It's
so in that sense, I don't like going from 0 to 400. But the real issue is I don't want to see it at 400. I just don't want to go there. So I want us to think about ways to not have to do that. And you say you can't levy. Maybe it is an adjustment between the funds. I don't know, maybe it is some alternative fee arrangement so the cost isn't borne just by the busing student families.
You could do 2 fees. You could charge everybody $100 for bus,
Yeah.
and charge the drop-off, say, a sticker for $400 or something.
Or just increase the student registration fee or something so that the cost isn't borne just by those families who live outside the walking distance.
I promise you, some of your tardy students with the drop-off parents would be on time if they're paying $400 for that service.
Very interesting idea.
And it would encourage them to use the bus.
But,
Yeah, it's like, well, if you don't want to pay the $400, you know, just put their kid on the bus.
So here's what I'm gonna recommend.
but
Because as your superintendent, we still have several items to go. I am gonna recommend, with your approval, that we bill $100 and that you bring more things, think about it for the next 2 weeks, because we can always add it before approval, because you always discuss things before you approve. So we're gonna go ahead and put on our fees $100 per student, because that's what I'm hearing generally. And then these other fees, if you wanna charge for the driving fee or whatever, I'd ask you to consider that, and then we can always revise our recommendation.
I would suggest that the administration come with a,
Our recommendation is no fee. I've already said that. Our recommendation is no fee.
that's
We've
for this
already
year.
levied for it. It's the best for kids because we know kids get to school on time. It's an orderly entry and we don't know what's gonna be happening with our negotiations. Our recommendation is no
and to
fee.
be clear, is that for the 17-18 school year?
That's for the 17-18 school year only.
Even if the contract increases, we've levied enough money to cover that?
It just depends, right? We've
I-
levied to the P-TEL.
I levied based on the projections that were done before I had this.
Okay, so if the contract goes up 30%, we're not covered by that. We don't have enough in the levy.
Well, no, what
Projection.
we would do is use fund balance, or I would apply
Right, I
state
understand that.
stated instead on top of the levy to cover it.
We still have fund balance in transportation.
I know that.
So,
I still like the idea of gradually getting there rather than implementing a major impact in any 1 year. And I also like the idea of incenting people to use the bus by charging them a fee for drop.
Because there is definitely, it's a very elastic fee. You know, we have 700 people on our routes right now, 700 students. We have, the average bus has 35 kids on it, which is 2 to a seat. They're not crowded, but they're not empty.
So,
But when we charge the fee, we used to receive about $80,000. And if I take the $80,000 in fees divided by what we were charging, we only had like 350 people paying. So you're gonna get a lot of people not using the bus, and you won't collect as much
That's what
money as you
happens.
think.
Then,
Unless you think of other strategies or look for the money other places or.
Yeah, but they weren't charging a fee.
Maybe-
No, I'm saying back when we used to charge a fee
When we did
before
charge a fee.
2012, 13.
You're kidding.
No.
We didn't charge anything. I'm suggesting if you charge them a fee to do that, they can be
I-
more
Oh, well, right.
But I want you to also think about how we would enforce that, because I'm gonna tell you, the people that are out for enforcing that in the morning.
No,
We'll
to me
contract
where
Craig
this-
Moreland to figure that out.
It
He's
seems
there already.
to me where this is leading is that everybody, either you do everybody on a bus route pays a fee. Whether you use the bus or not, you're paying the fee. It's not optional. Or you're going to every family in the district with a student in the school pays a fee.
Yes.
Whether you walk or you're bused or you're driven or whatever, you're all paying the same fee. And that seems to me to be the most fair solution. Right, and everybody does have a vested stake in more bus use because of the tardiness issues and things like that. But I'm opposed to having such a burden on people simply because they're within a busing zone and they want to use the bus. I think we should do more to subsidize that demographic.
So, as a superintendent, I have to tell you, right now I'm hearing two things. So we bring A and B. A would be no fee, no charge. B would be $100 charge, and then I'm gonna put an asterisk at the bottom of that and say, in consideration of whatever you guys wanna call this bus loop fee. And I would ask that you really think about that, because I'm gonna tell you, and I may be really wrong, but I think you would get a lot of consternation on that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, how I would do it is I think you either don't, I think the two options are nothing at all again, or we do $100 and that's it.
And we can talk about other things over the course of that following week.
And you see what you then have a data set off the whatever fee implementation, and that then informs other decisions about drop-off fee and all this other stuff that we can look at. But I think until you know what the customer does based upon the fee, and it sounds like one way or the other we're going to have to go there to cover our costs down the line. So I say get started and get your data set in place.
We will bring A and B to you, and then you can decide whether it's gonna be no fee or $100. We'll bring those to you.
To Julie's point, Kevin's been whispering in my ear, you know, we do pay our crossing guards to stand out on the corner and help kids cross. If there was a transportation and safety fee that was applied to everybody, you know, to cover not just buses, but all those other services that we provide.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what? Let's,
So that's option
That's
C.
what I would, yeah.
that will be option
Plus
C.
the people, the people who,
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
That was Kevin.
Thank you.
That will be option C.
Last safety fee,
Right.
and that's
To
to man
everybody.
this circle, right? To make sure that people, to pay me for
Keep
doing
traffic
what,
moving.
telling my kid to put his helmet on.
All right, did you hear, Leanne suggested that would be option C. So A is nothing, B is $100, and C is a possible transportation / safety that you could add to one of those two. We will bring that to you guys at the next meeting.
I like that.
Okay. All right. Okay, now we're going to move on to item D, which is a review of
Kevin.
item D, which is a review of board agreements. We do this every year, and it's included in your packet. I'm sure you guys have read all this, but some of this is for the camera. The community needs to be aware and know a little bit of that. We have certain standards that we hold ourselves to, and unless people want me to, I'm not going to read all of them. I mean, that'll take a little while, but I thought I could maybe highlight a couple things. Just I know we have a massive audience watching. The kinds of things we expect of ourselves when we do our board work. You know, for example, this board expects from the administration regular communication from the superintendent on a weekly, usually on a Friday email. We get notified as soon as possible when there's emergencies or accidents. We get our board packets the Thursday before all our board meetings. Our superintendent, she requests that additions to the agenda be received at least 7 days before the meeting. That direction is only given at board meetings when a majority of the board votes in favor of such direction. There's all these standards that we hold ourselves to that help us be better board members. We have agenda agreements, and an example might be any board member may request an item be placed on an agenda by either emailing the superintendent or bringing it up when we ask for that at the beginning of a meeting. We have standards when it comes to meeting preparation. We ask that board members will come to the meeting prepared to discuss items and agendas, and that they'll submit questions to the administration the Monday before the meetings. And it goes on and on. It's about 3 or 4 pages of board agreements that the board all holds ourselves too and review every year just to make sure that we're doing our job adequately and respectfully. But I don't think I need to go into it in any more detail unless anybody wants me to continue reading. It is available in our board package should anybody in the community want to see what it takes to be a board member. It's good reading. But otherwise I'll move on.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah,
about
sure,
this?
of course.
In case, you know, the 3 or 4 people that are watching this.
And they're
meeting-
curious.
You know, we've had this thing in Lake Bluff, a tradition where we talk about 2-term limits. And I think one of the reasons that this stuff goes smoothly right now is because everybody on here has already served a full term. And some of us have been on here for longer than that. I think there's a significant amount of time that board members and the board as a whole puts into getting everybody up to speed, operating in a way that doesn't interfere with what the school administrators are trying to do in running the school, if we adhere very strictly to that. And that's, you know, I'm not particularly interested in running for a 3rd term, but I think it's good for the board, and I think it's good for the district if there are people who have served for a number of years.
I'm in agreement with that. And actually, I think it was in the Lake Forester, they emailed me about our board elections, and I really kind of wondered about that because, as you know, we have the 4 of you are running unopposed, and he did ask me. He said, "How long do you think it takes for a board member to get up to speed?" And generally, because you are my 5th board or 6th, I think I lost track. Usually it takes a year because it takes a full cycle, and it might take more. A year is an accelerated gift.
Some of us are slow.
Like this group. This group is gifted, so I'd say a year. But you have to go through the whole cycle, and once you start repeating the cycle, it starts making a lot more sense.
We'll go through the whole
So-
cycle, and then some of the one-off stuff that you can't really talk about on camera or whatever, you know, I think to get a good background in it, you need to be on it for at least a couple of years.
2 years for sure.
The 2-term limit is very challenging for administrators because then you've always got new board members coming and going. This will be the first time in my career that I'll have the same board again, hopefully. So,
There is
ever.
no
Okay, right.
legal term limit. That's a caucus
Right.
policy. And they also made it very clear this past time that the new caucus could be convinced under circumstances that seemed, you know, with solid arguments that it was appropriate to have somebody go 3rd term. So if you're interested, go.
Mark's a lifer,
Not where I was
think.
headed with that, just an observation.
Two and done.
Right.
Two and done.
Are we commenting on the
Sure.
board policies? There's just one thing as I read it over. I thought it all looked great, but for one thing, under board community communication number 5, 5B says, board members have no authority to solve problems. I mean, I'd like to think we have some authority to solve some problems.
I think it means that the whole board has, individual members.
Individually,
It's up, but you gotta read number 5, you gotta read what that means for 5, at the top of 5.
Board members
Well,
will,
I saw that, but, okay, board members.
the board itself does,
Or
but board
individual
member,
board members.
individual board members.
Okay.
It did strike me as odd too, maybe individual board members, the word individual makes sense.
Mhm.
But here's, raising comments, here's one
improvement that we might consider. We've been doing, Mark, under your leadership, have been doing a good job of getting Jean her reviews every year in a timely manner. When we came on this board, do you remember? They hadn't been done at all. And so, I know there are elsewhere that's probably in the contract, it's identified, but it seems like that's one thing that the superintendent has a right to expect, is that she's gonna get timely feedback regarding her performance. So, and I noticed it wasn't here. I don't know that we need to add it here, but it strikes me that we've been doing a good job, but not every board might be as diligent as Mark has made us be in the last couple of years.
is this just board meeting agreements, or is this all just board in general? Because when I read about it, the super expects, they all kind of seem to be like a
board meeting.
And I would tell you what you're talking about is more administrative procedures.
Okay.
Because I believe, and I can't remember because we just reviewed that policy committee members, that in the administrative procedures, it's the superintendent should
If
be.
you're
able to
okay
do
with
it
it not
every year.
being there, I
It's
am
in your
too.
contract, right? That we do it every year?
Yeah, it's in my contract too,
Yeah.
so.
Did you guys all get the email that
Yeah.
links to the, did anybody not get the email that links to this, the superintendent evaluation? All right, good.
One second.
Okay, good, I'm fine with
That's the next
not
agenda.
making edits, but I agree with Julie that individual.
You did? You're not the
Yeah,
Hamlet
but we
and Smith?
have your new email, so you should have
Not
received
the
it.
Hamlet and Smith?
No,
Oh, because she asked me specifically what emails to send it to.
okay.
And I
So
gave
he
it over.
probably didn't because we have his new one.
Can you tell Lori? Yeah, thanks. All right, so,
That's the next agenda item.
Okay. Anybody, any other comments on the board agreements? Couple edits, but good, okay. And then Jean's gonna take us through the superintendent evaluation cycle.
So the evaluation cycle has already started because you should have already received the link. Keep in mind though that my artifacts report and the report out on all the board indicators is not due to all of you until January 27th. So that's important to know. Because we had down that the survey link was going to be sent out January 28th. So you may want to see my report before you start looking over
I don't think
some
that'll
of
be a
it.
problem.
Just thought I'd share. In February, by midnight on February 6th, board members should have completed the SurveyMonkey evaluation. The week of February 6th at
And,
midnight.
wait, Tom, I've learned that there will be an automated nagging email coming to you if you hadn't filled it in. I don't have to do it either. It's really cool.
Well, we can't do it until the 28th.
Right.
And then it's due the 6th.
Do the 6th at midnight, then Mark compiles for a week, and then on Valentine's Day, you'll be working with Mark on in closed session.
Great.
And then John and Mark will meet with me at
It's
the
our
end of February.
favorite part of the year. Okay. Anything else on that?
That's it.
So now we move
I'll
to-
bring treats to that meeting for you.
Not necessary, and I won't cook.
Because if I cook or bake, you would probably not eat it.
Now we have to review item 5F, which is an intergovernmental agreement between the Lake Bluff Police Department, the Fire Department, and District 65.
Right. What you have in front of you, this is actually, we've been working on this since September. We are going to be one of the very first school districts in the state of Illinois that has this agreement. And basically, all of our administrative team, along with Chief Belmonte, has worked on this agreement because our video surveillance cameras are now up and running at both elementary and middle schools. In fact, we had a very, very well-led instruction by Jay yesterday, so we can get on our computers now and see every camera in both schools. We can actually save it and email certain parts of the tape if we ever needed to. But our law firm, Hodges, specifically Jeff Galitz, has worked on this from sitting down with all of us and talking to us about when would the police need to be looking in. The bottom line is during the course of any school day, unless it's an emergency like a school shooter, they would get permission from the administrative team. And I have given them authorization. If they cannot get a hold of me, any member of our administrative team can say, we're sending this to you. You need to be able to look at the videos tonight, right now, today, when we're talking. At night, in any situation, because students are not there, they can log in. So, you know, if the alarm goes off at 1 in the morning, not only will they call me or Steve, but they will also log into the video surveillance and actually look at the camera.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Is there any chance that this is a closed session topic? Because
Yeah.
item 8 says security procedures and use of personnel and equipment to respond to actual threat and reasonably potential danger of the safety of employees.
I was told it had to be talked about in open session because
Okay.
it's an agreement.
As long as we're not giving away the
Nope.
details, I guess.
Not giving away any details, we're just letting you know that this agreement allows the Lake Bluff Police specifically to get into, we're gonna train them, they'll be able to get into our video surveillance system and look to see what's going on at various levels of urgency. That's it. It's a well-written contract. The village right now is having their leader look at it. And then we're going to be bringing this to you on January 24th. And it will go to the village most likely in February for their first approval.
One comment that I had on page 17 of the board packet, page 2 of the agreement, there's a question from
Yes.
council. And my thinking is it ought to be evergreen. I don't know of any reason why we would want it to terminate at 2 years. It seemed to me more likely that we would forget and it would be out of date by mistake. So why
I left
not?
this in to ask you what your preference was.
I hear Susan.
And because we can cancel after
Okay.
with 5 days notice anytime.
Right.
So let's not let it lapse.
Okay?
And there's no cost to us associated with this other than the cost of the legal.
Right.
Right.
The other note on page 3, where it says it's page 3, page 18 of your board packet, where it says this subsection could be carved out separately. My wish is that it's actually memorialized in this contract, so it's there. That's it.
That's
Fine.
Questions, comments, concerns?
That was good.
All right, just one more example of our administrative team working with our local agencies. And I do believe it's going to be a prototype for many districts that have good working relationships with their police departments.
So that actually
Many do not.
that will be approved by the village board.
Yes, it will. They'll need to approve it also.
All right. So now we move on to 5G, strategic
Right.
planning. Nothing in your board packet, but Jean will take us through her thoughts and the calendar on that.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my thoughts. You have in front of you the current strategic plan. To bring it back to freshen your memory, Shelley, if you want to flip to the next slide. We now have 2 updated and beautiful buildings, which is exciting because that will fit in with a facility plan that is eventually going to need to be done. You have the current plan and it runs from 13 through 18. So why are we talking about this now in January of 17?
Because
I know if you did it already.
Susan.
Because it takes a long time.
That's part of it. What's the other part of
because
it?
Jean kicked
Already
ass.
we did so well, right?
Because we've done so well, we've met almost all the goals. So I want to remind you what our mission is: to provide a premier educational foundation that enables each student to thrive. Our vision is excellence in education, enthusiasm for life, every student, every day. Next. And our guiding principles, which I want to highlight. This, I think, is probably one of the most important parts of the whole plan. The best interests of students must guide every decision. Education is a partnership involving parents, students, school staff, and the community. Social and emotional wellness is integral to the learning process. Fine arts are fundamental to an exceptional educational experience. Our facilities and technologies must enhance the educational process. Students learn best when they are actively engaged and individually challenged to meet their unique potentials. Excellence in teaching promotes excellence in learning. Fiscal discipline strengthens our schools and community. Effective and transparent communication with all stakeholders is essential for the district's success, and continuous improvement requires data-driven evaluation and decision-making. My read on this, when I came here, and actually as part of my interview process, every single one of these items was highlighted as either something important or something that was not being done. So the strategic planning process that we went through my first year here really brought all this to the forefront from all of the stakeholders in the community. Next. I'm not going to go through all these. I want to remind you we have 4 broad goals. Student achievement is the first one. The teaching environment is the second one. Finance and operations is third. And I slipped in a picture because I actually recorded on the strategic plan with staff. And I wanted to remind everybody what our middle school library used to look at. This particular picture, which really highlights the beauty of our old library,
Upstairs.
was actually part of our strategic planning process. This was one of our community meetings in the summer. And so that picture is memorialized for us, which I just had to slip in. And goal 4 is communication and collaboration. One of my thoughts as we move forward is I don't see these 4 goals really changing a whole lot. They're all 4 major aspects of what school districts do. We may want to add a goal, but certainly all the subtopics underneath all the goals and how we provide evidence that we've reached that will be changing. So just something to think about. Next. I want to point out to you, since I've been here, all the committees that we have that teachers are involved with now. This was interesting, and I had quite a few teachers comment to me, they did not realize we had all these committees. So we now have a district professional development committee that came about from answers on our 5 essentials. We have a district teacher evaluation / student growth committee. We have a district insurance committee. We have a district recognition committee. We have a district technology committee. We have a district calendar committee, which has always existed, by the way. This was not new. And so with all that in mind, we asked, obviously, staff for a lot of feedback, but like we shared before, we've met almost all these goals and many more a year early. So our strategic planning, 2017 through 22, begins now. In fact, it's already started. Next slide. Great job. Okay, next
That was
slide.
not us.
Something that I've already done to get the ball rolling is in December, and hopefully by the end of this month, I've started what I'm calling my listening tours. That doesn't mean that I'm a band and going around playing music. What it does is it means I'm meeting with small groups of teachers to talk to them. I've already worked through the middle school, and I'm asking 3 questions. What do you love about the district? What do you think needs to be changed and or worked on? And what would you like us to consider for the future? That data will be shared with you. Nate and I visited with each of the teams at the middle school. We got some great data, and we've seen some really interesting patterns that is going to help us in this next strategic planning process. And I will be working at the elementary school to do that within the next week or so to get that going. At the January Institute Day, which was last Tuesday, right, Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday, we asked the same questions of all the staff, and those are all fed into a spreadsheet, and I will share that information also. Again, some of the same trends. Another aspect that we're working on, which I wish we would have done the first time around, but we didn't, and we have great relationships with the Park District and the Village. So now we're going to share some resources. We're all starting our strategic planning. So instead of sending out 3 community surveys, we decided, hey, why don't we send out 1 community survey and have 3 different sections. There'll be general demographics for everybody. Then there'll be a park district, a school district, and a village survey. The village survey, they've already started. So they're using their survey as kind of a follow-up to affirm everything they've done in their strategic planning process. The park district and the school district, we're both on the same schedule for strategic planning. So what we're in the process of doing is doing a request for proposals. Once we get a company chosen, we've talked to a few already, we will be designing a survey. That survey, the questions that we will be asking will come back to you as a board as to what do we want to hear from this community. So there'll be a written survey, which right now, tentatively, because deadlines for everybody are always, we may say have it all done by February 15th, it might be March 1st. It will most likely go out in March or April, this community survey. But also, we will be doing focus groups for the school district and park district. So we'll have all the staff feedback, which I will be done with collecting soon. We will have the community survey and the focus groups. And then finally, we will have a parent survey of some kind. So all of this we're going to be collecting. So we've already started the ball rolling on all this. Next slide. So what I have to talk to you about a little bit tonight, and I want you to think about it, because on the January 24th meeting, I'm gonna come back again. We need to form a committee. So the question is, who should we have on that to represent the community for this? Keeping in mind, I think for the village, they asked many people, and they came up with, how many people were on that, Leanne and Mark, because you guys both did that?
It was packed when I was there,
Because I've heard it was about 30.
easily.
So I think that there's a lot of stakeholders that are interested in schools. I'd be happy if we had 30. And then based upon all the feedback we get, we would be scheduling probably 2 half-days. It may wind up to be 2 full days. And basically, we need to affirm our goals. We need to look at each one of those goals and decide under those goals what we're looking for. We will review again, and because I can't say this, we'll review again the mission and vision to see if you guys have any wants to change any of that. We review the 4 goals. We review the indicators under each of these goals. We see if there's going to be any other goals that you may want to add. And we make sure we have representation, and we will sit at tables and move around and put this together. Right now my goal is to get it done in 2 half-days, keeping in mind, again, that the whole structure of this is going to pretty much remain the same. There's going to be other things that change in here.
Can I just make one little comment on the previous page? When you get your groups together, let's make sure under community members that we have non-users well represented in this.
Very agreed. And I'm hoping I can get some names from all of you on that. I have non-users that we've used in the district, but I would really like to see some new people on that
That would
too.
be smart, because otherwise you get too much of the same opinions coming in.
Does it make
Julie?
sense?
Bill? Go on.
Does it make sense to have anybody from the library?
Absolutely. We'll probably, that's why this next, on January 24th, I'm going to get down, I want you to think about it for the next 2 weeks. And then we're going to take down what areas do you want represented. We need someone from the library. We have a great working relationship with the library. They need to be involved. We need to have non-users. We know that 80% of the community are non-users. Now, I don't think we could have 80% of our committee be non-users, but it would be nice if we had a few that were very verbal and reflective and thoughtful that they could provide feedback for us. I think that's important. When you look at here at this, so the tentative plan approval, running this by you, would be August of 2017. We would vote on the approval. During that summer, because if you remember, you set the goals, we set the things that you're looking for in the goals, and then the administrators go back and say, how do we show evidence of this? Those are called indicators. We will need the summer to figure out what all of our indicators are going to be. We bring the new strategic plan and the indicators to you in August for approval. And then if you look, it would be the fall of 17 through the summer of 22. And then I broke out the years. This first year would be first year and tweaks. The second year would be second year and also transition planning. The third year is just the third year. And then there's a transition year, most likely of leadership in 2021. And then in 21-22, a new plan would be developed. I think this is an important map out plan because as I consider retirement, you have a full strategic plan in place so that does not have to be the first thing a new superintendent would do here. It's important that they have something to come into, and then their second year here, they could work on how they want to do a strategic plan. That is optimal for this.
So that's saying your retirement would be in 2020 or
2020.
Do you think approval in August is aggressive? Because
I
we
think
usually have one meeting in August, right?
Right.
And
I think it's aggressive, but I also think we could easily do it.
because I was thinking maybe one meeting, we only have one meeting, maybe one meeting to present it and get feedback from the board, and then the following
Could
meeting.
do that. And get approval in September. We could easily do that.
Because we, just, they're kind of opinionated, they might have some ideas for it.
It's our district strategic plan that everyone should have feedback on. The administrators are gonna be working right with you in all of these different areas. I think probably one of the biggest things that I had talked to John about when he was considering running for the board is we finally, when I came here, the first month I was here, I must have been told 100 times at least, you need a facility plan, 20-year facility plan. And I kept thinking, how do you do a 20-year facility plan when you've got Lake Bluff Middle School looking the way that it was? You can't do it. Now we are going to have these 2 buildings. We're going to finish up our work on the middle school over the summer. We have to have a 20-year facility plan so that when Jay retires and goes and walks on a beach, somebody can say, okay, 2025, this is the year we're replacing the boilers. So hopefully people are saving money the 4 years before that to do that. We have not been in a position to do that. So we need facility plan. You need to think budget-wise, finance-wise. We're dealing with an ever-changing environment. And I always share with this next slide with the teachers because this is how we all feel about legislators. This chart represents the teaching experience of most people making decisions about education. That's all about legislation. All those people that are making decisions in this next year or 2 are going to be providing us a whole new arena, and we still have to have a strategic plan with goals that are important. Probably one of the biggest things under the goal 3 is going to be keeping that fund balance. I think I can say very realistically that this board is interested in a 30 to 50% fund balance. That probably won't change. You're going to want to discuss it. You're probably going to want to say that needs to be evaluated once in the spring and once in the fall. That one's done already. I think what you're going to find because of the value of the discussions you've had here, that it's going to be easier than you think. What I'm concerned about is we need to be really reaching far ahead and thinking, where do we want our district to be in 2022 and how are we going to get there? What is going to make Lake Bluff different than any other district in the state of Illinois? And how are we going to stay ahead of all the other districts and really offer that quality education that our Lake Bluff residents expect? So those are things that we cannot miss, and that's where we need feedback from parents. What are we missing? You know, I always bring up my example because it's outrageous and we're not going to do it. But what are we missing? I always say we need a swimming pool because I know we're never going to get a swimming pool. But those are the kinds of ideas. You may get an idea from someone and it may be so fantastic, it's like, why did we never think of that? So we're embarking on strategic planning, and I will bring this to you again on January 24th. Does anybody have any feedback or comments?
We're not going to try and change the vision and mission statements and all that this time, right?
That's up to you. The opportunity's there. I will voice.
I'm just offering the suggestion that we don't.
I will tell you the vision. This vision we have printed on pretty much everything, and we love it.
It'll cost money. to
Yeah,
change it.
yes, it will take time.
All right,
I
so
don't
it
see
will
us
cost money
doing
to
any
change it,
better. So if everybody looks happy to keep it.
Well, I'm happy with the vision statement, but I remember the mission and the guiding print. I remember having a few improvements on those, suggested improvements. So
Well, the
I don't wanna
process
support
of when
those.
to get
I
it was ridiculous.
the process
so.
would be how we came up with the vision statement, which here are a few ideas. Let's, decide if we like one. So I don't want to shut the door on anything. So,
Well, and so that leads me to one other thing I didn't share when I gave this. It is my intention right now of leading this process myself and then bringing ECRA in at the end for how they're going to help us monitor that for evidence. But we will not be paying that fee for ECRA because
excellent.
we're basically taking their plan and just making some alterations and changes. Feedback?
Excellent. I think that's definitely the right decision.
Anybody else?
That concludes my report.
All right. So that concludes our discussions, and we move on to item 6 and offer the opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please do so. If not, I will ask for adjournment at 8:27.
So
And a motion to adjourn at 8:27. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great night.